How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show.
Wow, that was really nice, Mark. I love that. I like that.
That's the new thing.
Dr. Joe.
The Dr. Joe Show. You have questions, we have answers.
Exploring who we are and why we do what we do.
So what are we doing tonight, Dr. Joe?
Well, Mark, I think,
We're jumping the shark, aren't we?
I think we are. I think it's time to tackle the NFL. Couldn't help it.
Oh, goodness gracious. When I decided to be on this show with you, I had no idea that we would be going after one controversial issue after another.
It's part of who we are as a radio show. WATD has a tradition of doing this. But it's looking at this thing in terms of the I Am approach. Remember, guys, I still believe that everyone's doing the best they can at every moment. It's an I Am. We're talking about this big controversy. The NFL, certain players have decided that they are going to protest not the national anthem, not the flag, but the words that the national anthem embodies: liberty and justice for all. And I think that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'd love to hear from veterans. I'd love to hear from anybody who has an interest in football, anybody who has an interest in who we are as the United States.
Right. So let's take it back to last year.
Okay.
Colin Kaepernick.
Yep. Is
he Rosa Parks?
That's a great analogy. Perhaps he is Rosa Parks. Wouldn't get off the bus. So why do you say that, Mark?
Well, I think that's that people are trying to make that analogy. And for somebody to be the first, I get it. It takes a lot of courage. He obviously is the one who's going to take the most heat because now those that are protesting are somewhat nameless unless they're part of your team and your child may wear their NFL jersey and it may upset you to a boiling point. Then they're not nameless. But that first person, Colin Kaepernick, will be the one that goes down in history as the one who started this protest, if you will.
He will go down on one knee.
He will go down on one knee. He actually started on his seat, and then it went to the knee next week. But here's why I don't think Colin Kaepernick is necessarily Rosa Parks. Okay?
Yep.
He was in a press conference not long after the very first episode of the protest wearing a T-shirt of a man who in modern day would probably be deemed the biggest oppressor of human beings, Fidel Castro. So for a man who is against systematic oppression, racial inequalities, unfairness in the liberty and the pursuit of happiness, why in God's name would he wear the shirt of a man who has oppressed so many people?
Yeah.
Because he's uninformed, right?
I hope that that's the reason. I mean, I'm not sure whether he understood what he was doing, wearing a shirt like that, Fidel Castro. But your point is you're feeling that he was not aware in a more global level of oppression in the community.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the issue itself, okay? Very divisive.
Very divisive.
Is it divisive or divisive?
Well,
let's talk about that for a second.
We can be divisive about it. But, folks, this really is a thing that is dividing up our country in a way that's not just the American and the National Football League.
Correct. And many people were very, very upset when this all started.
Yeah.
I being one of them.
Really?
I was. I felt that as though that because it wasn't clear what they were protesting.
Uh-huh.
And I understand by definition, protest is to make people uncomfortable, right? To get their message out, you have to make people uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're not going to get your message out. The problem was, in the beginning, what was the message? Mm-hmm. And by having Colin Kaepernick as your poster child for this issue, who was unable to communicate it effectively, put a lot of people in a position where they thought this is a joke and this is not a real protest. But as this started to formulate, and a lot of things have transpired over the last few days, because the owners have met with the Players Association, and there are leaders now involved from the players' perspective, not including Colin Kaepernick. He was not at the meetings on Wednesday.
He's not a player anymore.
Correct, which we should probably
at some point
dive deeply into the whole collusion argument that he's putting forth now.
Well, the punishment of his freedom of speech, because that's what some people could consider, that he has the right to protest, the right to say what he wants to say, and yet he's being punished.
And that's what I'd really love to hear from the veterans who have served our country so admirably, is did they do what they did so that people have the freedom to do this, or are they so upset that they're disrespecting what they've done? I mean, because that's what it really comes down to with respect to those men and women who have served our country so honorably.
So are you saying that the veterans aren't the only ones, though, who are allowed to have an opinion on this and saying, whether or not it's disrespecting our country or not?
No.
Of course not.
No. But
which would not be freedom of speech.
Right.
Right.
Correct. But I didn't serve.
I didn't either.
And I would say that they definitely have a bigger dog in the fight than I do. Although at first it upset me dearly that they were, in my opinion, disrespecting the flag. And I think a lot of again, I want to go back and say that I don't think that their message was conveyed clearly. And I think it probably formulated as time went on. I don't think they necessarily had the proper message in the beginning, but it formulated over time. But I also think that there was a lot of spokespeople for this protest that were saying some unruly, ignorant things, such as Hall of Fame receiver Shannon Sharp. He is now a commentator. He's not on one of the bigger networks. I think he's on he might be on Fox 1 or something like that. He's not on one of the bigger networks, but his YouTube clip is going viral because he, quote, said, "Nobody fought for a piece of cloth."
Huh.
And he's just not thinking.
Yeah.
Because he's taking it in a literal manner.
Very concrete.
That nobody actually fought for the piece of cloth. Well, they did.
They did. It's in what it represents.
Right.
What it represents. But isn't there a background context as well that really we need to talk about why Colin Kaepernick did this? I mean, there were other things going on socially in the country that really prompted him to do this.
So it was this time last year, and that we were having some pretty well exposed police brutality cases.
Yes.
And he was standing up for them
by sitting down.
Exactly. But again, I don't think his message was conveyed clearly. I think it's been much better conveyed over the last week, if you will. Mm-hmm. Once the NFL really had to say, okay, we need to pay attention. Our ratings are down. Our admissions are down. Our fan base, our demographic, the American people, middle America, is very upset. Anheuser-Busch is threatening to pull out. Our major sponsor is threatening to pull out of sponsorship. We need to get in front of this one way or another. We're either going to punish them and hold them down and force them to stand, or we're going to get into a room and we're going to figure this out. And that's what they did on Wednesday, and I think it was good. I think what has come of it now is that they understand one another now. And basically the players have said, we've been supporting all of your initiatives. Breast cancer, we've taken the month of October, we'll wear pink. We'll go overseas. We'll represent the NFL how you want us to. But you need to pay attention to what's going on in our communities. You need to help build back our communities, and they have. They've set up some programs where they're going into the communities, and the NFL has some real groundbreaking initiatives that are just starting to hit the forefront now, starting yesterday.
For what? For what, Mark?
I don't know exactly what they're doing. I saw a quick clip of Roger Goodell, not a huge fan of many people in our region here, but it was a good clip. He was coming out of the meeting, and he said that we're going to go in, we're going to do some workshops. And who knows if it's just lip service, but I doubt it. I mean, they really need to pay attention to their workforce, right? I mean, this is a labor union after all.
Right. And they're going to be called on it if they don't deliver. I mean, people, it's very, very visible. NFL is
Correct.
very visible.
Right.
Hopefully, my very, very dear friend Kenny should be calling in. Is he on the air? Kenny, are you there?
I think so. My buddy. How are you?
I am so honored that you have called in tonight. Folks, I want to introduce you to Kenny from Zoom. And Kenny...
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And Kenny was in the first and second seasons of Zoom, right, Kenny?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, two Emmy awards, and the part for me that was so exciting in retrospect, we had no idea really what we were doing or creating then, but it was
None
really
whatsoever.
right.
Yeah.
But you remember 1972. What was going on in Boston? There was busing. There was all sorts of racial difficulty. Kenny, I'm so glad you're here. Mark, can you just tell us a little bit about Kenny Pyers, who is honestly, guys, folks on the audience listening, this is one of my dearest, oldest friends. We have known each other for over 45 years now?
Yeah. Well, I had to take off my socks and shoes and everything, and I still didn't have enough fingers and toes to count it up. But
yeah, and so tell us first, where are you calling from, Kenny?
I am calling from Hampton, Virginia.
Hampton, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
And you have had quite a remarkable career since Zoom. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I don't know if I would say blessed, but yeah, after Zoom, of course, I went down and I was in Cape Cod and Falmouth, went to high school and all of that, and it was kind of like figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, and for some reason the Air Force popped in there, and I joined the Air Force in '81.
Yes, joined the Air Force, and you
I ended up staying, liking it, and all of that, and did 28 and a half years.
28 and a half years.
Wow.
And I understand you achieved the highest enlisted rank of Chief Master Sergeant?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's incredible. And thank you. First of all, Kenny, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you, Kenny.
And,
my pleasure.
And I know that you've been an independent benefits advisor for the last 5 years. So what are you doing with that?
Yeah, I work for the Duck, Aflac. So I'm an independent business advisor, and we help businesses. Our target market is 3 to 99 employees. Help them provide benefits to their employees, and it gives their employees a great discount on our products, and it's a tax savings for the business owner.
So you're still helping people.
Yeah, and that and I did some other things prior to that, and that was the thing that drew me to what Aflac is all about, and that's helping people.
Yeah.
Did you do any other acting, Kenny, after the Zoom?
No, I didn't, and I kind of that it's still in my heart in a sense, but it just never materialized. Once I joined the military, that that went to my heart and then stayed there, and I had some great assignments and things like that. But that theater arts and acting and stuff has always been there.
Yeah, and you were so good at it. And we had so much fun.
I bet.
Yeah, we had a blast.
So I've got a series of questions for you. The first is going way back when to the 70s. Where were you living when we were doing Zoom? Because we did Zoom out of Alston, WGBH Alston Studios on Western Ave. Where were you living at that time?
I was living in, a little bit in Roxbury, a little bit in Dorchester.
Yeah, and what was the experience like for you as a young African-American male living in Boston at a time where, sometimes things were kind of rough for all of us?
Well, yeah, and I was part of a program called METCO at the time, and what that did is take some of us inner city kids and bus us out to some of the outskirts places like Lexington and some of those outer, and we had host families, okay? And so you had inner city African-American kids going out and staying with predominantly white families out there for, like once a month, a couple of times a month. And it was just a program that, it was set up to try to, open up communication and all that kind of stuff as far. And during the 70s, well, you know how things were at that point. And in the initial stage of it, things were a little, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? We don't like this. And then it turned out to be, hey, wait a minute, you guys are just like us. Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And everything worked out.
Yeah, and really that was part of what I think Christopher Sarson, who was the innovator and the executive producer of Zoom, I think that's part of what he was maybe thinking of. I mean, Zoom was the first fully racially integrated show, but it was just kids.
Really?
Yeah, it was just kids being kids. The writing was by kids. Granted, adults were filming it, producing it, but everything went through the kids. What was vetted, the songs, the different bits that we did. It was a pretty remarkable experience.
Yeah, definitely. So,
go on.
I think that was sixth grade that I went to school in Lexington. I went to sixth grade in Lexington.
And then you moved to Falmouth.
To Falmouth, yeah. And I spent there, graduated high school there, and then, like I said, joined the military about 3 years after I graduated high school.
Wow. And that's part of why I was so delighted that you were willing to chat with us tonight, because from your perspective, as someone who has really served 28 and a half years, I'd like to say that it was more than half my lifetime, but it's not. It's almost more than half my lifetime.
Yeah, you and me both.
Right.
Right.
What do you think about our topic, about NFL, about Colin Kaepernick, about all this? Where are you at with it?
Well, I'll answer the question with a question, starting off with a rhetorical question. In my mind, when did kneeling become a sign of disrespect? And I'll answer that by saying that we kneel to pray to God.
Yeah.
Wow.
We kneel to kings and princes and all those, dignitaries out there. So I'm not sure, what happened. I might have missed it, but kneeling, is not a sign of disrespect in my mind. Now, everything that has been going on is taking away from why Colin Kaepernick knelt in the first place. Okay, it's not about the kneeling. He's not disrespecting the military. He's not trying to disrespect the flag. He is trying to bring attention to what's been happening for many, many, many years, and it's just maybe come to the forefront here in the last, few years, especially with a lot of the incidences that's been going on, to bring attention to if you and I were driving home at the same time, and we both got into the same traffic incident, okay, and law enforcement showed up, there is more of a high probability that I wouldn't make it home to be able to tell you about it than you.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the facts, and there's enough, publicized happenings out there that, over the past few years that it's, so he's trying to bring attention to that. Okay. Me as a former military person, and been places to where I'm proud and blessed to have been born in this country. Okay. It's, I'm more offended by, wearing some pants that are flag color because, putting it around your body to me is more offensive than what Colin Kaepernick and the rest of the NFL are doing at this point in time. Again, they're not trying to disrespect the flag or anybody who served, especially. They're expressing themselves freely, which is part of what the military does, is protect our freedoms to express ourselves.
Yeah. Okay,
freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and all of that kind of stuff. So, I don't take it that way, and maybe, I'm not speaking for everybody in the military. Some people do maybe take it that way, but again, I think it's more of a distraction from the real issue that Colin and everybody else in the NFL and some of the other sports now are have come on board to say, okay, yeah, we have a real problem here, in our country. We still love this country, and I'd go back and do it again, serve in the military or fight for this country if I need to. But what am I fighting for? I'm fighting for, those freedoms that we have in this country, one of those being, freedom of speech and choice and expression.
Yeah. And you say that, so eloquently, and you're right. I mean, I hadn't thought about that, the kneeling thing. Had you, Mark? I mean, I think that's...
I had seen that opinion written also, and it makes sense. It's a great point.
It really does. It makes
because they're just separating themselves from those that are standing. But Kenny, I'm wondering. Obviously, you still keep in touch with all of your former military friends and brothers and sisters. Are they all in agreement with you on this, or are some of them pretty upset about what's happening?
Yeah, most of my counterparts are. We're kind of looking at this like, okay, why? The other thing is why are we spending more time worrying about what our professional athletes are doing versus some violence that happened here in Charlottesville, Virginia. We had a couple of lines there, and we're done with that. But yet we're stretching this NFL thing out about kneeling, and there's no violence involved in this or whatever they're doing. So it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
And I think that is part of why all of this is so striking. There is still racism in the country. I mean, let's just be frank about it. There's still this division. Yeah,
Joe, and I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, you and I have known each other for, 40 plus, 45 plus
That's right.
years.
Yep.
And you and I are anomalies to where, you're from South Africa.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And, a white man from South Africa and a black man from inner city Boston,
yeah.
And I still feel, back in the 70s, we was probably politically incorrect, and unfortunately, we're probably still politically incorrect. So where have we gone in 45 years in this country?
I know. But boy, we had so much fun. We would hang out in Harvard Square. We would go check out movies, Orson Welles back then. We did a lot of really fun things.
We did some stuff.
We did.
Yep. I think, I was trying to figure out why we were still friends, but, I figured because we both like lobster.
Thanks, Kenny.
And we both eat yogurt. So,
Yeah.
Kenny, did I hear you correctly? And I don't want to challenge you. I have not walked one step in your moccasins, and I appreciate what you have accomplished in your life. But did I hear you correctly in that you said we really haven't come very far in 45 years?
I don't feel that way now. I felt better about it, maybe years ago, and maybe the correct term is maybe we've come full circle again, back to a place where we don't need to be.
Why?
But no, really no, I don't, because we're still dealing with some of those same issues, and they're rearing their ugly heads again that were evident in the 70s, 60s, 50s, prior to that. Americans, or that word Americans, defines one kind of race or whatever, and the rest of us are not Americans here. Whether you're whatever it is, Asian, Native American, you mentioned that, and of course there's a lot of Native Americans where I'm from, in that area, in Cape Cod and Plymouth Rock and all of that kind of stuff. So, and you can take that further into, okay, who are the real Americans? Well, the Native Americans that were here at that particular time. So, and of course, Massachusetts has that history that's in there, but now we've come to a point where there's a lot of issues, and some of them are the same issues. Some of them are new issues that are starting to separate us again as people here.
But why? Why is that happening, Kenny? That's what I'm trying. Okay. So let's dial the clock back, even just 12 years. One of the Bushes is in administration. There was still 24/7 news. There was still exposed TV, if you will. We weren't seeing these types of incidents on TV. There was racial harmony, but now all of a sudden, it's in front of us constantly, and it's confusing to me. And I from a person of color, a man of service, I'm wondering at what point did we tip backwards if that's what you're saying is actually happening?
I don't really believe we have tipped backwards, in the sense that I think it's kind of always been there underlying. It's just that it hasn't been in the news and in a focal point here in many years. And I put it that way because of where we're at right now. Okay, we should be, as a people, far beyond worrying about what somebody's color is or their nationality or what country they come from or whatever, because the other point that I wanted to make is I don't remember where the United States and this country stopped being great. Okay, when please tell me when that happened, because I've been some places where, like I said earlier, that I'm blessed to be born in this United States, and we are still the greatest country in many things. Except for maybe our dollar, that's changed a little bit over the years. But when did we stop being great?
So are you referring to a particular political slogan that was rallying people?
Oh, okay. So you want me to go there? Is that
no?
Yes, I am.
I'm not saying I want you to go there.
Make America great again?
Yeah.
Okay. When did we stop being great?
Are you suggesting that we are no longer great?
No, I want somebody to answer that question for me. When did we stop being great? Because as far as I'm concerned, we have some of the best military, we have the best athletes, we have the best a lot of things in the world. So when did America stop?
Well, it depends on
great?
what defines great, right? Are we the strongest military power right now? Do we have the strongest economy?
No, that's a good question too. What does great mean?
Right.
Okay. So there's a lot of questions, statements, and things out there that are very vague and not backed up as far as, okay, well, here's this and here's that and here's this. So But, hearing that, it's like, okay, when did we stop being great? So make America great again, all right? That, insinuates that there's a point where we stop being great.
It's such an interesting slogan, really, because it does create this image that somehow America has gone backwards, and that we are not the power that we were, that we aren't the integrated community.
Well,
that we
that's
were.
That's a great point.
It's really interesting. And I wonder, and again, this is me being shrinky. I'm sorry, guys. I can't help it as a psychiatrist. It happens.
How do we feel about this?
But how does this project our self-image to the rest of the world?
Well, it depends
if we
what
are
you want.
saying to the rest of the world, yep, you know what? We didn't notice it, but we're not as great as we were.
Well, it depends on what your definition of great is. Are we the leader of the free world? Are we the dominant country that we once were? And do we want to be that? That's the real question. So if your definition is the greatest nation, then we're the most feared nation, where a lot of people do not want to be known as the most feared nation, right?
And those are two different things. I mean, there is a difference between being respected and being feared. Right? Being respected, for me, means that somebody sees you with remarkable value.
Right.
And that allows you then to have a very trusting, meaningful relationship, whether it's between individuals or whether it's between nations, whether it's between races, whether it's between religions, whether it's between sports teams. But fear cripples a person. Fear alienates you. What is the motivation of biological fear in an animal? It is to run away.
Right.
Because you do not think that you're strong enough to win. Anger is when you approach someone because you want to fight them because you know you can win and you're going to beat them down. But
so are we the most respected nation in the country?
I think we were.
So when did
by
we
some
stop?
people.
When did that stop, Kenny? I mean, when did you exit the service? When was your last year of service?
09.
Okay.
October of 09. And yeah, I agree with Joe as far as if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather be respected than feared.
Of course.
And respected falls under a democracy, not fear. Fear falls under that other stuff.
But if you were there for 28 years, ending in 09, was there a difference at the end of your service than, say, the beginning of your service on how you were received in other countries?
As an African American or as a
military,
soldier?
as an American soldier?
Mm.
Well, that is, twofold. I mean, everything, you can look at history as far as the military and our everything that happened over in Iraq and Iran, and
Right.
I did some time in South Korea. So yes, things have, and us being in tune to some of the other countries and our allies and those that want to be a democracy and helping them, those are things that we need to do, and that does gain respect. Okay, so this latest pulling out of this deal here overseas is that sends a message not only to Iran and those kind of folks, but to our allies too. We're looked at as, let's be involved in world issues, and let's try to help those things and do those things that are going to, one, keep peace, and then get those countries that need help where they need to help. So yes, we are looked at as that kind of country, along with others, England and some of the others out there.
But not less so present day than maybe in 99.
I feel right now that relationship is deteriorating. So I think it's going to end up being, if it isn't now already, which I think it probably is a little bit less, that it's going to continue to spiral downwards.
And is that the last 9 months or the last 4 years and 9 months?
No, that's the last 9 months.
We've lost all of
in
our.
In my opinion, I'm gonna give you the straight, honest opinion. No, that's the last 9 months.
Wow.
Because, all right, so here, the country, we're not a business. You cannot run this country like a business. Okay,
You mean it's not about ratings?
Business-wise, that I can, as the CEO of a company, I can say, all right, this is the way things are going to be. Here's this, here's that, here's the rules, blah, blah, blah. You cannot do that politically.
Yeah, it's really been fascinating 9 months. You know what else happens in 9 months? Like pregnancy and having babies. So I'm not sure what we're about to deliver.
Do you think our current president should be getting involved in this conversation?
Which conversation, Mark?
With the NFL?
With the
and
NFL,
flag.
yeah, and the flag.
No. Well, I mean, like I said earlier, there's more important issues for him to be in than and that. My other thought is okay. So the vice president showed up to a football game. When was the last time he went to a football game? Okay, and really, how much does any of the fans care that he was there, and how much really does the fans care that he left? That.
What about the fact that?
What was that all about?
What about the fact that the fans are upset and boycotting and not going to the games?
Some are, and that's because they believe that America is not great. It wasn't great before. Okay, but again, they're not. How many of those fans really know what the issue of the kneeling and locking arms and all that is about? And obviously, you mentioned it earlier about the NFL's decision here. If it was such a issue, with the NFL, they would have just said, okay, well, let's, all of you guys need to stand for the national anthem, which, okay.
But
I think they tried that.
But do you think that the focus on the flag and disrespecting the country is a way to deflect from the real issue, which is that a certain population
no doubt.
of our country are disrespected?
No doubt whatsoever. Again, like I said, we're spending more time on this than we have on some of the violent stuff that's happened racially here in the past. He made a couple of comments about Charlottesville, Virginia, and all of that stuff that happened there, and the car running in and driving over people and all that stuff. A couple of questions now. How many Twitters and all this other stuff? And I just saw something today about some kind of petition, that he's come out with, against this national anthem stuff and all this. Okay, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's more important than the tax bill and the Affordable Care Act and all this other stuff that we've got going on. That you want to come out with a petition now?
Well, in a sense, he's bringing exposure to the issue, though, whether he's intending to or not.
And that's correct. There is that it's okay. It is bringing some more attention, people, but I don't know if it's bringing the right attention to it.
But is that also part of what's happening? Again, my psychiatrist hat goes on.
I'm on the couch?
Right.
I'm on it every week, so right. Get used to it, Getty.
Okay, all right.
There is something called the unconscious, right, which is where these things are brewing around in our minds, and we are not always aware of them. But I'm not convinced that that's part of what's happening here. I think that this underbelly of the United States has been there all along, and is now being exposed and is being, spoken about. And we need to look at it this way, from my point of view. Again, from
and that underbelly is the folks that discriminate.
Yeah, and my feeling is this: look, when you really look at this from an IM lens, because remember, the IM doesn't pick and choose what's good and what's bad. It's just saying, let's try to understand what's happening without judgment. If there is racism, and of course there is, let's try to understand that and try to, instead of saying, racists are bad and these people are bad, the reality is it's here. How are we going to manage it? We're dealing with, and I don't want to compare what, marijuana to racism. But the reality is that in Marshfield now, I know it's
we really jumped.
No, I'm going to get there. I promise. I'm going to bring it back. I promise. In Marshfield, there was a vote in town meeting that was to say there could be no marijuana shops in Marshfield. And that vote was voted down. So there will be marijuana shops. Okay, so the question is, it's not a good thing, a bad thing. It's a why thing. So there are people who have strong opinions. And rather than dismiss those opinions, if we dismiss them, that's disrespect. That begins the whole cascade of fear, and we're never going to get anywhere. So I'm not agreeing with one person or the other. I'm just trying to understand it. So Kenny, from your point of view, you know, as a person who has served in the military, African American, who, whether people want to admit it, reached millions of people with Zoom, because Zoom was different. We reached millions of people with the message of respect and value. That's what Zoom was about. It was catapulted at a time in the United States when the racist crisis was in full bloom. It was happening, and there's this group of kids playing with each other, mixed races, no question about that. They're just people, kids playing with each other. That was the message of Zoom, right, Kenny? I mean, that's what we did. So
yeah, and Dr. Joe,
yes.
Here's what I would. Let me give you an experience I had real quick. Early on, when I first joined the military, and actually it was in basic training. So this is 1981.
Great.
We were together, you know, going through and all, you know, different kinds of races whatsoever. But there was this one kid, and he said it to me, that was there, white kid, and he was from somewhere in the middle U.S., and he had not seen a black person before in his life before coming to basic training. Okay, so, you know, we spent a little time together, whatever, and we're in the dorm there, and he says to me, and I say verbatim, he says, you know what? You guys are just like everybody else. And I was like, yeah, what did you expect?
What a great story.
So with that, I'll transfer into racism is taught, in my opinion and in my mind. Okay, why? Because kids, before they know anything, they don't care what color you are. They look at you and go, oh, there's another kid. I can play. I can do this. I can do that.
Yep.
Which, you know, us as Zoomers or whatever, and our family upbringing and all that kind of stuff, once we got together, we were there to do a show. And, you know, we didn't care which one. And even if we did at that particular time or before going into it, it didn't show. I didn't, you know, get that from anybody else. And we had all sorts of races and everything that were thrown together. And we bonded because we had a mutual thing to bond on, and we did what we did. And then, you know, we moved on, and we're still all friends today. And not just the first season, the second season, the third season, Zoomers, because we're a part of something that was the same and we're familiar with us. So taking that to the bigger picture of America, why can't we do that as Americans?
I agree.
Why can't we all just zoom?
Why can't, well, you know, you know, a little bit more than that, but why can't we just you know, meld together and say, yeah, we're American.
But haven't we?
Oh, by the way, let me just point this out. Puerto Rico they're Americans over there too, so I'm not sure where we lost that track either, you know, which, again, I pull it back to where we are now. Now I'm not ashamed now, but I'm becoming kind of embarrassed based on what's going on right now to be, you know, in this country. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm still proud and I'm still feel that I'm blessed, but with everything that's going on right now, we are not looking good as far as the rest of the world. Okay, so if we're supposed to be that power and that structure, and, you know, we got our allies out there, their confidence in us is waning.
But Kenny, on a day-to-day basis, I have to come back to this. Over the last 40 years, I mean, do you not think that we've advanced and diluted these racists from the community? I mean, the local communities. I'm not talking about media.
In some cases, but I don't know if it's advanced to where.
But don't you think a lot of this
is not as obvious anymore, or
really?
Technology, or I'm not sure what the mix is. Or here's the bottom line. I feel that we should be more advanced than we are at this particular time right now.
You know what, folks? We are just about out of time. This is clearly not a black and white answer. Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
No.
I couldn't resist it. It's not a black-white answer. Kenny, thank you so much for being our guest. This is the Dr. Joe Show. Thanks, Mark.
Dr. Joe Show.